Research by SBM Intelligence shows that the cost of preparing popular West African meal jollof rice in Nigeria dropped marginally by 3.17% to nearly 27,000 naira, while in Ghana, a pot of jollof rice rose to 430 Ghana cedis, a 2.5% increase in the third quarter of this year. Now, the research also notes that the combination of unresolved insecurity and heightened festive season demand in the fourth quarter of the year will likely trigger a significant rebound in the Jollof Index. SBM also further notes that policy success in Ghana remains geographically limited, exposing a severe issue of regional inflation inequality. Victor Ejechi, head of Insight at SBM Intelligence, joins me now to unpack the report. Victor, thanks a lot for joining us on the show today.
Thank you so much for also having me.
Yes, now let's walk through the key details we have from this report and the sort of divergent picture when we're looking at the trends in Ghana and Nigeria for the third quarter of this year.
So it's quite interesting. When we talk about inflation, most times people don't get to understand what it means to them as a person, as an household. So one of the things that we find out that using jollof, for example, which happens to be one of the delicacy in West Africa, to do that measurement, we're able to find out that for the past years that we've been running this data set, and then when we look at the back end of our data, we find out that there was actually a drop in terms in Nigeria, for example, there was a drop in the cost of food. And for us, we feel like, okay, is that really the reality of things? For Ghana, we also saw a bit of an increase, about 2.56% increment in the cost of preparing jollof rice in Ghana. But the most interesting thing about these two, I call it a tale of two kitchens, actually. The interesting thing about these two kitchens is that for Nigeria, for example, we observed that the headline inflation has actually dropped. And then we are seeing that the food prices, of course, are dropping. Jollof Index shows that it has dropped. But then it will look as if that is really the reality in our house. So when I go to the market, for example, things are still expensive. So the average Nigerians want to understand what really is the job that we are talking about. Let's hold that thought, then we'll come to Ghana, for example. Ghana has been doing impressively well when it comes to inflation. Their Ghana plan is to actually have a single inflation rate in the country. And then we saw that Ghana is actually, they are about 9.4%. This is about like in the last 4 years, Ghana has saw that drop. But then they are also seeing an increase in terms of the prices, in terms of the production cost of rice and all that. So what then is the cost of these things? So we saw that in Ghana, for example, there's what we call an imported inflation. The cost of rice, the cost of tomatoes and all that have mostly been imported into Ghana. And that obviously saw the increase in the cost of making jollof rice in Ghana. For Nigeria, for example, I so much believe that personally, I don't think that the food prices have dropped. Right? What we are seeing is just what we observed that in September that we saw a drop in the prices of things in the market, but what we call the harvest season. Once it's the harvest season, we saw that we usually see an increase in terms of production. So I think that is not sustainable, right? Because it's just a seasonal changes that we saw in that. So give and take, I see that Ghana is improving, but I can't say much about Nigeria.
Okay, let's also talk about Q4 outlook. You've also talked about the element of seasonality here. When we're looking at case scenarios, Nigerians, Ghanaians adjusting their pockets to the realities of the moment now, atomized purchasing, and also this idea of re-engineering jollof. We just have to make these changes, really.
Yeah, so you will see that most households that want to eat chicken, for example, we have to go with beef. Those that usually do beef will want to go for crayfish. Everybody is looking for one way or the other to still be able to get good meal and actually be on a balanced diet and all that. But in the Q4, one thing that we also observe is this is seasonal period, right? This is the festive period. There is a tendency of things being increased. So the prices of things are automatically increased. So most times we don't even produce reports in this Q4 just because of that spike that will happen. So those spikes are seasonal. It's called the demand and, of course, demand and supply inflation happens to that. But for Ghana, for example, of course, the same thing happens in Ghana. But we're looking forward to seeing what Q1, when there's been stability, will actually happen. That's the next year data to see if there's stability in the food prices.
Okay, wrapping up the conversation now, let's do a risk assessment analysis, and then when we're also looking at some of your key policy recommendations, what's feasible near term? What should be the priority for the government at this moment?
You see, one of the issues that I have is insecurity. We can't take that away when it comes to Nigeria. You can't take that away. The cost, in our field report, we saw that one of the issues that people are facing is you've produced something in Kaduna, for example. Taking it down to Lagos, you have to pay some form of people in between the road. And those things, they're not official record. They're not on official record. You just get to see that there are roadblocks at every point in time. Before you come down to Lagos, there have actually been an inflation in the prices of those things. So there have to be a form of stability. Of course, there have been a stability in our currency, but that has to continue. And then apart from stability, there needs to be growth. Because it's not enough to have stable economy. At that point, after the stability comes in, growth is required. So I think we're looking forward to growth in the Nigeria economy. For Ghana, also, we're actually looking at Ghana. I am interested in Ghana because Ghana is appearing to be the past of Nigeria or something like that. In that sense, is that Ghana has, over the years, if you check the last few months that I've been monitoring the CD, you realize that it has been improving. So we're looking forward to having them having the single inflation rate they are looking forward to. And I just hope that the government in Ghana should look forward to making sure that they have to produce things in the country, because the imported inflation is going to still make things expensive.
I would say despite the improvements we're seeing here, both countries are still working on a tightrope, and we definitely need to work with tact at this moment. But we'll leave the conversation here for now, Victor. Thank you so much for your time. That was Victor Ejechi, Head of Insight at SBM Intelligence.